Thanks for everyone for taking some time out of your afternoon and joining me. So a lot of times I've partnered with Elderworks and we've kind of gone through an overview, touched a little bit on disability, but primarily usually focusing on our retirement and related applications. And today we decided we're going to deep dive a little more into the disability aspect of Social Security. Um, so as we go through, like Kristen mentioned, you be sure to leave any questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to address anything when we get to the end. Um, just to start off with some general housekeeping, just a reminder, this information is current at the time of the presentation, which is February 4th of 2025. So if you're watching this, rewatching on YouTube or watching it at a later date, you can always make sure to visit ssa.gov to make sure the up-to-date information, especially from year to year. If we have a cost of living increase, all of the facts and figures that I'm going to go over today would then be different as well. And just to start off also with some changes we've recently gone through as an agency, in which we are switching to what we could refer to as appointment focused service. So with this, what we're doing is we're requiring appointments for pretty much any walk-in visit. There are, of course, dire needs, certain situations, or someone experiencing homelessness, things like that, where we might be able to do exceptions for it. But it is going to be the expectation generally if you're going into the office, whether it's, you just want to talk to someone face to face for whatever reason, whether you need a social security card or a proof of income letter, we call that benefit verification, that those are going to be available. You're going to need to have an appointment before going to the office, whereas it used to be that you could just walk into the offices generally for a short business like that. We've been using appointments for things like filing for benefits for a very long time. The easiest way, because you are required to have an appointment for anything you want to come into the office for now. We don't have walk-in traffic except for limited exceptions. So going online through ssa.gov, in a little bit, we're going to talk about your My Social Security account and all the wonderful things you can do online through that. If you're not able to do it online, of course, we know that's not always an option. We have our toll-free National 800 number. You can call that at 1-800-772-1213. And they can either help you with your business there. It might just be that you need to make a change to your record that they're able to handle for you. There's an automated phone service that gives you a lot of options, like checking application status, replacing or getting a proof of income, the benefit verification. There's a lot of things you can do without actually waiting on hold and talking to a person through that automated phone service. And then if that is not something that they can take care of, if it's couldn't do it online, you can't do it on the phone, then they can schedule you the appointment to come either by phone or in person with your local office. And if you're not sure where your local office is, we have the field office locator on ssa.gov/locator. You can put in your zip code. It'll give you your field office address and information. Sometimes it has like helpful steps for like directions, especially if we're kind of located within one of those kind of strip mall sort of things, or something that might be a little bit more you want to note and be prepared for prior to visiting. You will have the local office fax number. If there's something you're submitting that we do not need to see a certified copy for, and you have access to a fax, that fax machine number works great because it's not actually spitting out into a fax machine anymore. It's all electronic. So if you submit a document, make sure it has a social security number attached to it, then the person on the other end is receiving it electronically and profiling it right to who needs to work it. So it's all web-based. Um, and that would be another thing you can see there. Most offices also have drop boxes. Pretty much all the offices have drop boxes where you wouldn't have to wait in line or have an appointment if you're dropping off a certified document, but you're okay with it getting back to you in the mail. Again, you could put that in the drop box at your local office. Make sure, again, there's a claim number or social security number associated with it in the envelope, and those get checked on once a day. If you are going all the way into the office, you will have the option to check in on your smartphone so that you can. I know that some people have this QR code come to them even in the mail prior to an appointment, because before 9 they'll be sitting out in their car and they'll have already checked into uh had their check in for the office. Um but if you're not able to check in from your smartphone by scanning the code at the office or in advance, then you can check in at our kiosks. They are ADA compliant, and most Social Security offices have these ADA compliant kiosks with that offer a little more privacy than we previously had as well. But let's get into now the central theme kind of for today of what we're talking about, which is our disability benefits. So, just to start off with our definition of disability for adults. So, anyone over the age of 18, for Social Security, we're going to talk about, we have two different programs we pay the benefits from, but this is the same definition of disability for an adult for both of those programs. So, we're looking at a person who cannot perform what we call substantial work or substantial gainful activity or employment due to a combination or a condition or combination of conditions that's severe and expected to last at least a year, or it's like a terminal illness expecting to result in death. And in addition to preventing maybe a type of employment the person had been currently doing in the past, or it must also prevent you from doing another type of work that would allow you to work and make that substantial gainful activity. So that part of the disability definition is a dollar figure. And again, anytime we have a cost of living increase, these figures would change. But right now for 2025, what we're looking at when they make the medical decision is, does the person have the ability who's filing to work and make this year in 2025 $1,620 gross or more despite impairment? So maybe they have impairments that prevent that work at the previous level, but they could do some other type of job and work and make that at least $1,620. So that is a very strict definition. Our definition of disability is different than the VA or maybe private agencies. We don't do short-term disability, so maybe it's a difference between what you might be getting through an employer versus what you would qualify through Social Security. So this is just for our agency's definition of disability. Now, we do have a higher amount if someone is meeting Social Security's definition of somebody who meets the definition of blind, and that is a higher amount at $2,700 a month. So that's what we're going to look at. Can the person, despite impairments, work and make either that 1620 or $2,700 gross a month? And uh, if not, will the condition be long lasting? Will it prevent that work for at least a year, or is it a terminal illness? So again, anyone over age of 18, this is the definition we're looking at. Now, under the disability umbrella with Social Security, we have two different programs we administer monthly benefits for. The first one we're highlighting here is Social Security disability. So, this is when we're paying into Social Security. So, I'm working right now today, I'm paying my FICA taxes. If something happens to me where I am no longer able to work or work substantially, and it's going to be long term, then I would be looking at applying for this Social Security disability, because I have the work history for this program. And I hope to beat the medical criteria. I believe I do in that situation. I have enough overall work, enough recent work, and I am less than my full retirement age. So even though we've talked about before in our retirement presentations, you can begin that as early as age 62. You can file for disability up until full retirement age. So as long as you're entitled before your full retirement age. So in those situations, you might have someone that goes out of work at age 63, but it's not because they were really excited about retiring early, but it's because of medical conditions. In that situation, they'd always want to look at Social Security disability as well. Um, Between the ages of 62 and full retirement age, you can actually file for the retirement to get the benefits going if you need money right away, and file for disability at the same time. So, qualifying for Social Security disability, we're working, we're paying FICA taxes, we're earning credits. This year in 2025, each $1,810 in earnings gives us one credit. The most you can earn is for a year. Now, for retirement, you just need 40 total. So, somebody might be able to get a retirement within 10 years of work because of those 40 credits. But for disability, there's a little more to it, because not only do you have to have enough overall work, which is going to vary depending on your age. So, somebody who's very young might not have had the opportunity to even work 10 years yet. So, they would, not to have as much work. Um, and recent work. So, that recent work, what will run into issues with that sometimes for people is maybe someone took a break from, not a break from working, but was out of the workforce to care for children or parents or other, responsibilities. And so they'll have a break in employment not related to a disabling condition. And then maybe toward the end of that break, they have a sudden, onset of a condition, maybe even a terminal illness, but they had several years off of work prior to that were not related to a disability. They might have enough overall work for retirement, but they might not meet the recent work requirement. So both of these have to be met for Social Security disability. Now, what do we need for work when somebody is younger? As I mentioned, a lot less work they need, of course, to qualify for it. So, up until someone turns 24, they generally need 6 credits, so a year and a half of work during the 3-year period prior to they becoming disabled. So, that is a lot less than somebody who's older. As you continue to age, you're going to have to, between 24 and 31, have to have worked about half the time of that time period. And over 31, you need to have worked 5 of the last 10 years prior to becoming disabled, or 20 of the last 40 credits. And so that's where that insured status comes into play with Social Security disability. So, and this is just a general scenario of how much work you might need. But again, we're going to talk about that My Social Security account at the end. You can actually see your insured status for the Social Security disability, as well as your retirement estimates within that online account. So that's the easiest place to check. So that's our Social Security disability, the one you work and pay into. And then we have our supplemental security income. So the way this is similar is, for anyone over the age of 18, you have to meet the exact same medical definition that we talked about. But unlike Social Security disability, you do not have to have been working and paying FICA taxes into that program. This is a federal needs-based program for individuals with limited income and resources. And this includes adults with disabilities, but as well as children, which I'm just going to briefly cover today too, in case you have someone you want to share this information with. And then after age 65, we no longer need to make a disability decision. Someone just needs to meet the income and resource criteria for the program to qualify for SSI. And that's a program we call an aged benefit. So, what with SSI, we're going to look at income, resources, where you reside, lawful status within the United States, um, a variety of different eligibility criteria, because it is coming from a general fund, because it is needs based, and it's asking that you use any other income or asset you have available to you first prior to using the SSI benefit that is for food, clothing, and shelter. It's going to ask a lot of questions, and sometimes people feel these questions to be a little too invasive. This isn't, if you have your work history into Social Security disability, you can say, I don't want to file for SSI. It's not a requirement that we screen you for it. You can opt out of even the screening part of that if it's something you're not wanting to be, asked about. But should you file for an SSI benefit, whether it's a child who's filing, um, a parent child filing for a child, an adult, or somebody filing for disability, or someone over age 65, we're going to ask all the same income and resource requirement questions. For children, we're going to ask the income questions for themselves and for their parents. And actually, if there's other children that are siblings under 22 or under 18 or under 22 and still a student, we're going to ask the questions of those siblings as well for income only. Now, resources, again, we're going to move on to next. For parents, we're going to ask theirs if they're in the household, and then the child filing in the household. For adults, we're going to just ask for their own, or if married and living with a spouse, we're going to ask the spouse's income and resources as well. Now, using the parent's income and resources and the spouse's income and resources, that is a term we call deeming. And that's again where we're using someone else in the household who has responsibility toward the individual filing. Um, what they are going to be expected to use some of their income first prior to us paying for the disabled individual or disabled child's bills. So the reason these are split into two different columns, earned versus unearned, is because we count them differently. Unearned income for the person applying is counted dollar for dollar with a $20 exclusion. Earned income has an additional exclusion of $65 gross a month, and we only count half after that. Also, if we're counting the parents or the spouse's income, there's a higher amount of earned income they can have versus unearned income. And also, the more children who are in the household without their own income, the higher amount a parent or a spouse can make um, to still qualify for SSI benefits. So whenever I go through these screens, I just like to mention these are just some common types of or income, some common types of resources. We want you to tell us about everything. So we're going to go through a long list of things. We're going to ask about these things like wages, unemployment, workers' comp, veterans benefits, cash from family and friends. And then we're going to say, is there anything else we haven't mentioned? Do you have anything else that maybe you forgot to mention or we didn't capture in our questions yet that you're using for income or that you have for an asset that could be turned into, cash? Um, for resources, we have this is not a comprehensive list of everything that can be included or excluded again. So you always want to mention everything and then we can look at whether it is countable or not. But I can tell you that we're always going to exclude the home in which someone lives in, the highest valued vehicle that could be used for transportation. So that would be regardless of value, like I used the example of Rolls Royce, as long as you're using it to go to the grocery store, to doctor's appointments, to school or work, we can exclude that. But if you have like a high valued show car that you only, move out of the garage for car shows, that is not something we can exclude because it's not being used for transportation. So the value of any additional vehicles we're going to look at. Now, on the flip side, some people have a second vehicle that they just purchased and had to borrow the money for. And as soon as they drove off the lot, they owed more than it was worth. So we're only looking at the equity involved in each additional vehicle. We do exclude burial plots for the individual and their family, and certain resources set aside for burial that all has specific policy to it. So you're just going to want to let us know about it, and we'll go through it with you as to what we count or don't count. Other things we do look at though always are CDs, IRAs, bank account balances, stocks, bonds, 401ks. The only thing I do want to note with 401ks is if it belongs to the parent or the spouse, we do exclude that. If it belongs to the person filing, even if there's a penalty to take it out, we do have to count that as an asset. We talked about vehicles, life insurance. If it's just a policy that's paid out if you pass away, that's going to not have any value to it. But if it has dividends, cash surrender value, things like that, we look at. And property other than where you live. So we don't count the home or any property connected to it. But if you have a lot, a vacation home, a second home, or even property in foreign countries, those are all things we need to be made aware of. For resources, if it's an individual filing, they have a $2,000 resource limit. If it's a person that's filing who is married, The married couple together would have a $3,000 resource limit. And if it's parents filing for child, say there's two parents in the household and a child, the parents would have their own $3,000 resource limit. The child would have their own $2,000 resource limit. And even if the parents go over their 3,000, we can sometimes move it down to that child's resource limit. So what I'm telling you all this partly for is just so you know that it's not always easy to know whether you would or would not be eligible for SSI. So if you're at all unsure or you're thinking about someone else in your life where you're just not sure, just have them reach out to get screened for the SSI program because we'd rather have somebody contact us and be told, you know what, this is actually going to put you over, than miss out on eligibility to this program. So that's something really important to just note for yourselves or for helping others. We do look at living arrangements for SSI. This doesn't make somebody completely ineligible for the program necessarily, but can affect how much they'll be due if they're living in a household where they're not paying toward shelter expenses, or if they're living in somewhere like a nursing home where Medicaid is paying more than 50%, then they're only going to be due $30 a month. Or if they're in a group care or board and care facility, every office usually has information or precedents for those local facilities to determine living arrangements. Now, again, I'm just going to briefly touch on things for children because I know this is mostly adult focused program, but we all are in the business of helping our family and friends and others. So it's good to be aware of what we have available for children with disabling conditions as well. With children, the part that is the same with the medical definition is that they have to have a condition expected to last at least 12 months, or like a terminal illness expected to result in death. But otherwise, when children are under 18, rather than looking at ability to work, we're going to look at if their physical or mental impairments or combination of impairments are resulting in severe or marked limitation in functioning, kind of looking at their functioning rather to benchmarks or other children their age. Deeming is a word I used a little bit earlier, and that's when we're looking at the parents' income and resources. We're looking at the spouse's income and resources. We're only looking at those inside the household. So if a parent or a spouse moves in or out of a household, we always have to do an update. Now, deeming for parents, for children applies until a child is 18. Once they're 18, we're no longer going to deem the parents' income and assets, even if they're still living with them. When they're living at home, we're going to be counting it with a natural adoptive parent, step parent who's providing support. Even if they're going to maybe a school where they go to school, but they're back home on weekends, holidays, things like that, we're still going to generally be deeming the parent's income. Now, when should you apply for disability? So you learned all about the eligibility requirements and you're thinking, well, I might be interested in applying for myself, or I know somebody that I want to encourage to apply for themselves or their child even. And the answer is as soon as the disability begins, if it's expected to be one of those longer term conditions. Now, if somebody, breaks their arm and they're going expecting to go back to work in 6 weeks, that's not something we consider to be a long-term disability. But if there's any indication that this conditions or combination are going to be resulting in that longer term disability, you want to apply for right away, because with Social Security disability, the most amount of back pay we can do is a year prior to the application date. So even if someone's been disabled for 5 years, we can only pay up to a year back. For supplemental security income, or the SSI for short, we do not have any back pay. So someone who files this month in February, if they meet the income and resource criteria, February would be the eligibility month. March would be the first month payable back to. This says application takes 3 to 5 months. In Illinois, we're running at least 6 to 8 months, somewhere, sometimes closer to the 12-month marker. But as long as you keep up with the application process, the back pay is going to be from that application date or before for Social Security potentially, and not from when the decision is made. Um, some conditions do qualify for a faster application process. So it's important to include the exact diagnosis or criteria for the medical conditions, because that's how our computer knows whether it's going to be flagged as what we call a compassionate allowance or a presumptive disability, some things that we have to kind of fast track those decisions or payment. Anyone over the age of 18, the easiest way to file for disability is online. Now, even if a person does not have a work history, they're going to start with the Social Security.gov disability application, the Social Security disability application, because that's the gateway to all other parts of the internet application. So you'll start online, ssa.gov/disability. It'll go through screening tools. You can start the Social Security disability. If you're wanting to file for SSI also, there'll be a question. Do you wish to file for SSI? Sometimes SSI is available online, sometimes it's not. And then the real nice part to me of going through that online is the third part, which is the adult disability report. In my experience, when I was taking these claims, a lot of times I would find that the person had provided a lot more information when they were sitting at home, filing it online. You can even go back into the application a couple different times if you need additional time to finish. Whereas sometimes when we get people on the phone, they'll be like, I have a back injury, and that's all they want to say, and they just kind of want to get off the phone. So that is really helpful when you can do it online. But of course, again, we know not everyone can use those online services. So you otherwise can call and schedule an appointment, call our toll-free number, and they'll set you up with most likely a phone appointment with your local office, unless you have some sort of barrier for phones that requires an in-office appointment. Then, again, sometimes you can file for SSI online, sometimes you cannot. But if you want SSI application taken, as long as you answered yes in the Social Security disability part, it will have protected you for SSI, and someone will recontact you if you are not able to file online to go through that part of it. Under 18 for children, there is no non-medical part available online. So the SSI application is not available online, but the child disability report is. So again, that's a nice report to have filled out in advance if possible, but you still want to go ahead and call and schedule an appointment. I do need to get rid of, I just noticed that very top bulletin where you can go online. We no longer have that feature eligible to protect yourself for the SSI benefit. So you do want to either call or and then to get the appointment, but also begin online with the child disability report to get that what we call protective filing date set. Because let's say you had called last week versus this week, that's a whole different eligibility month. So last week we would have had January for an eligibility month. This week it's February because we went through into a new month. Now, what we're going to do, whoever's assigned the application at the local office, whether you filed online and it gets assigned to them, or whether you call and have a phone appointment and they do the interview with you, they're going to be the person at Social Security reviewing all the non-medical criteria. Do you have enough work for Social Security disability? Do you meet the income and resource requirements for supplemental security income? And then, if the answer is yes to either one or both, whichever you're eligible for the non-medical criteria for, we're then going to send it to our disability determination services. That is where they make the medical portion of the decision. So they're going to take over all getting all the doctor's records, medical information, things like that. They will obtain the medical records from the doctors you listed. We're going to have you do an authorization for release of information. If you see a new doctor, always report that and let us know so we can add them in for records, but otherwise they'll have the people you listed. They might send you more paperwork to complete. They might send somebody else you listed as a contact paperwork about your activities of daily living, things like that. And they might ask you to see a Social Security doctor, which is paid for by Disability Determination Services, contracted through Social Security. And they try to have that doctor as close as possible, but you also do get mileage. And it's really important to keep the application or the appointment if they schedule that we call a consultative exam, because if you miss it, they can deny it if you haven't let them know, the reason that you're going to be missing or needing to reschedule that appointment. And then the other thing they're looking at for adults is this 5-step process. Is the person currently working? Is it under substantial gainful activity? We don't usually send it for a medical decision. If the person is over that substantial gainful activity, we're going to make that decision in the office. But if under, but still working, we're going to document all that work activity for the people making the medical decision and send it to them. That person's next going to look at, does the medical condition meet the definition of severe? So it's preventing that substantial work for at least a year or something that's going to result in death. And then there is a listing. I believe it's the Blue Book is what it's called, but you can find all these impairment listings through that on SSA.gov. Does it meet or medically equal a listing on the of Social Security impairments? And can the person do the work they did before? If not, can they move to any other type of work and be able to make that substantial gainful activity? After all of that, the disability termination service is going to be making their portion of the decision. So they're going to be the ones that's giving the medical decision. Now, if approved for Social Security disability, a lot of times the letter is just going to be issued right out if we don't need anything additional. And you might even see a deposit in the bank before you receive your award letter. If approved for supplemental security income or SSI for short, again, we're going to have to go back through income, resources, living arrangements. We're going to find out if there's any income proofs we need, like pay stubs or unemployment, whatever monthly income the household might have had coming in. And we're going to have all of that documented before we can begin payment. So in that situation, we might cold call to go through that update. We might send a call in letter, or we might send a letter saying, hey, we're going to call you at this date and time to go through this update. If not medically approved, in both situations, you'll receive the medical denial from the disability termination service, and they will explain why the application was denied and for the right to appeal. If you disagree with this decision, which unless you've gone back to work full time, most people usually do. In those situations, you want to be sure to file a timely appeal, because as long as you file in a timely appeal, that clock we were talking about in our first example, where you set up, you started online or you called today for your appointment, and started with February, and then up to a year back for Social Security, depending on the disability, or starting with March, first possible payment for SSI. Those dates are secure as long as you file within 60 days. Should the next person who makes the medical decision in 6 months or whatever it might be decide that the first person was wrong and you are disabled back to the date, that you alleged, or your application date, you are protected for your back pay. But if you do not file the appeal within the 60 days and you wait, and then, several months down the road, you're just like, oh yeah, I still am not able to work, I'm going to just file all over again, you're going to start all over that clock of eligibility for payment. And there's some other things you just need to be cautious about in waiving your appeal rights. So make sure you file your appeal if you've not returned to work full time within that time period. Now, another thing that we might have to develop for when someone is awarded before we can begin payments is on either program if somebody needs a representative payee. So for children, anyone under the age of 18, unless for unique situations they're close to 18 and they do not have a reliable family member or other person to receive their checks for them. This is, like I will say, commonly we would see the situation in somebody close to 18 and maybe they're in a joint custody situation with the parents and the parent can't decide who should get the checks. If we think the teenager is responsible enough, we might just pay them directly for the last 6 months of their benefits, things like that. But otherwise, pretty much everyone under 18 is going to have a payee. But also, sometimes an adult needs a representative payee. And this would be the person who makes sure their bills are paid, all their money is managed, all the reporting responsibilities are done through Social Security. So if they move, have a new bank account, get married, all those sorts of things, those become a representative payee's responsibility. So a representative payee is generally a relative or friend or other interested party who's going to receive the checks on the beneficiary's behalf. So in that situation, they've determined not capable of managing their funds, and they're not allowed direct access to the payments monthly. The payee is going to be responsible for making sure all the responsible bills are paid first, and then any other money is used appropriately by the person who is eligible for the benefit. So we are generally doing these interviews over the phone. We're first going to look at what's the relationship. Sometimes we have people bringing someone in to be their PE that we can tell right away is probably not in their best interest. Most of the time, it's going to be a close parent or family member, or a really good long-standing friend, somebody who's close to that person, has their best interests in mind. We're going to go through those qualifications that you need and reporting responsibilities, which I kind of touched on, your duties, and liability for not reporting changes. So if the person becomes overpaid, the representative payee might end up liable to be repaying us the money for that overpayment. And then, of course, how you spend a beneficiary's money if you're a payee, on what we would try to do for ourselves, hopefully food, clothing, medical care, housing, first, personal comfort items, and then saving for foreseeable future needs. Again, with the SSI program, though, you just have to watch the amount you're saving because of those resource limits. So we do have additional information if this was a topic that you are wanting more information on. We have great resources on our representative payee site online, so ssa.gov/payee. We have this publication, a guide for representative payees, that you can find on our website, but you can also call and request if you want one in the mail, or you can call and ask questions to the toll-free number. With Social Security, the biggest things you're reporting are change of address, phone number, bank account, or returning to work. There's a few other things that might come up, but those are the main ones. For SSI, there is a long list of reporting responsibilities, and they will be printed. I'm not going to read them all because they're going to be printed on any paperwork we send you. The initial application, the review we do if you're awarded, the payee application if you're the representative payee, they'll all be listed there. So just really important for accurate payment that were reported any changes, ideally within the first 10 days of the following month at the very latest. We kind of touched on that, how to get help in the field office locator. I forgot to move them from the from the back to the front. But here is our website, ssa.gov. So if you've never been on our site, I strongly encourage you to check it out. The very top will have like hot button topics. One of them that you might be interested in learning more about that's up at the top right now is the Social Security Fairness Act that passed, a month or so ago. There's FAQs on that and additional information. So if you also go to our contact us section, it'll take you to frequently asked questions. If you think of something after we're done today, feel free to go just type search in the search box, or go onto the website into those frequently asked questions, and you might find your answer there. So a lot of great resources, a lot of information for different groups. We have, even for educators, we have lesson plans on there. We have information for financial planners, accountants, all kinds of different things, people who help others like advocates. So I do recommend checking it out. And if you have not created a My Social Security account yet, I would make that your homework assignment for whenever you have a moment to do that, because these are where you want everyone over the age of 18 to create them. I just saw on Facebook the other day, one of my friends was kind of helping me with my job by promoting it. She had discovered it. She set hers up and was telling the whole world about it, to help prepare for retirement. So if you've already had an account like myself for many years, we are eventually going to be forced to go to login.gov. But you know what? I gave it a try with my username and password yesterday, and it still did let me in. But we are going to be asked to upgrade and transition to the login.gov. If you already have a login.gov, you're going to sign in from our homepage to your login.gov. It's going to bring you back to our page to pair your My Social Security account with your login.gov. Or if you have ID.me, same thing. It'll, to have you sign into that from our page and then bring you back. If you've never had an account, it will now, if you hit create an account, it'll take you through login.gov. It'll have you create your login.gov account and then come back to finish setting up your My Social Security. But if you have any trouble with login.gov, you can always use id.me. We don't have a requirement on which one you use. Some people already have one or the other, and that's where it'll be easiest. But if you go through create an account with us, it's going to take you through that login.gov. Here's another thing I like to let you know about, because we did touch on the SSI program today. If you go to our search box and type in SSI Spotlight, or you go to the link below directly, there's a lot of great information kind of in bite-sized pieces about the different aspects of SSI that you might find helpful to review. One of the really, I think, cooler ones that have come about in the last several years is ABLE accounts. We do have a little bit of information on that. We don't set them up, but we can exclude ABLE accounts for up to $100,000 for SSI. So much higher than that $2,000 resource limit. How we count income, how we refer to living arrangements, SSI benefits for non-citizens, because there's a lot of very limited and specific rules about that. Just a great variety of topics there. And then that My Social Security account, again, once you've got that created, if you do not receive benefits, so say haven't done anything yet, what can you do? You can go on, like I mentioned, you can find out what your disability estimates are, that you have enough credits for disability, that you have enough credits for retirement, your spouses, survivors, all those estimates will be available to help you plan for yourself or your family's future. Um, and make sure your earnings record is posted correctly, because that's another big thing. We used to send those statements out every year. We stopped doing that years ago. But even then, when we used to send our statements of earnings out every year, a lot of times people didn't look at them. They didn't open them to make sure their earnings were posted correctly. And that's a really important step to have just been done regularly prior to getting to the point you're going to file for retirement or file for disability. And we may have to correct them if they're wrong. Also the big thing for individuals, whether or not you're filing for any benefits, if you need just a replacement Social Security card, you're not making any changes. If you have a valid driver's license or state ID, you can generally make that application completely online through your My Social Security account. Even if you cannot do the application completely online, if you start the online process through the Social Security number and card link, it'll allow you to do a Social Security card application online. And if you can't do it through My Social Security, it will allow you to do all the application. It'll take you to the end of that. It will allow you an option to schedule an appointment to go in to complete your application in the office, and it'll tell you exactly what documents to bring. Once on benefits, a lot more you can do. You can opt out of mail notices, but you would still get the cost of living increase letter and your 1099, but most other things would come just into your online portal. You can report wages online, whether it's Social Security, disability, or SSI. Get proof of income. So I mentioned that a couple times. We call it a benefit verification. Sometimes people call it an award letter, energy assistance, certain other agencies, loans, places like that will ask you for this proof. You can print that right from the online account. And again, changing for Social Security, your address, your phone number, your bank account. If you're required to submit a payee reporting, you can do that online. You can get a replacement Social Security card or a replacement 1099, actually up to 6 years prior of 1099s available online now. And here, once you get logged in, I want to show you what it'll look like. This is what you would see if you are not a representative payee. It's just the top part. It's going to take you through to your own account. But if you are a payee, it's going to also give you the representative payee services, which are kind of neat. Because it will allow you to do your accounting online, as I said, report wages. Even if it's not their own online account, you can report their wages as their payee through yours. So that adds a lot of great benefits to it as well. And that is it. That's all I have for you today as far as the disability. I encourage you to review online. Like I said, look through the handout. and check out our website and make sure you have that online account too if you don't.